is a transcendental mission, and this is usually what draws people to you and keeps them in.
Go follow this creator. I think it's all of the things being discussed are so useful. I talk a lot on my page about spiritual discernment, right? Or just discernment in general. But with spirituality, I think discernment is so much more important because we're dealing in unseen realms, right? We're dealing in things that you can't explain, and it's very easy for people to be co-opted in those spaces. And additionally, like being grounded and knowing what you're getting out of something, why you're engaging with it, how it contributes or takes from your life, any of those things, just being more conscious as you operate, that'll never be a bad thing, for starters. So I talk with my friends a lot about religion, politics, society structure, spirituality. I was raised in a certain kind of Buddhism. When you start healing or self-actualizing, there's so many things you become aware of and you start to digest and process around. And there is like nuance that you miss that when you're looking backwards, you're able to, with your new awareness, place and sort and sort of like digest and process, right? But, and what's funny is the friend I had lunch with, oh, I don't know if I said that. So I had a dream about a friend, and then that dream prompted me to reach out to that friend, and then we had lunch. And what's so funny is, like, I'm spiritual, woo, right? And that friend is very, like, analytical and, like, this, I don't believe any of this, right, type of thing. And so I don't talk about that stuff with them because that's not what our friendship is based off of. But what was interesting is this lunch, we were talking about a lot of things that were, like, outside of the scope, and he was saying how, like, he's realizing certain things and he's rethinking things, right? And challenging his own edges and perceptions. And it's so refreshing. But it got me thinking because it's like, even when before I started posting, it's like that thing where you don't want people to be challenging your reality, right? Like, I personally have so much validation for the things I've received spiritually, and it's been witnessed and validated, like, people around me, like, there's just too much confirmation. Everyone's in on it, right? So, I didn't have to be like, am I making things up? Because it was externalized in my life and everyone has witnessed over years and years and years. So, but even with all that, I still have that challenge of feeling like, is this wishy-washy? Is it real? And then one of the things that I always like come back to time and time and again is free will, spirituality. I have some friends who are more Rage Against the Machine, and I haven't gone to that place. I'll go there like in anger, but like not like really, like, because it's not a productive thing that can't get us somewhere. It might be a catalyst, but it can't get us where we want to go. So it's not really useful as like an ideology to like live in. And one of like the things I get some pushback with some spiritual friends I have, right, is like, we have to be grounded in everything that we're experiencing to make use of it, because if we don't, then what are we doing? Then we're just being like, la 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 la, right? Like, it's all nice when you're talking about it, but how do you actually implement it? So one of the interesting and challenging things is a lot of time people don't experience their morality separate from their religion or spirituality, right? Like, I've arrived at what my morals are based on my own process of self, like reflection, like, you know, like going into myself, what is it? What do I value? Even if my Buddhism says this, I was always the person, and also in the Buddhism I was raised in, we were taught you're always supposed to question, you're not supposed to follow. It's supposed to be about self-actualizing, but again, as organizations and people do, people co-opt. They can't help it. I don't know what it is about us human beings inside, right? Where we get off track a lot of the time. But so my thing was always like, why are we doing this? And maybe because I'm neurodivergent, maybe because I grew up multicultural and being on the edges of things, I got the benefit of never just accepting something as it is, because I didn't live in a world where it just existed for me so I could accept it. So that could be why I'm more prone to this type of like inquiry, right? But I was at this lunch with a friend, and we were talking about my gifts, and I was saying, it always makes me uncomfortable because I can know something about someone without their consent. And that's a weird situation to be in, right? But I'm an ethical person, so I try not to cross that boundaries or use anything, right? Like, I have some sense of responsibility, and I think that's like built in for some reason, because, and like I said, I've always been interested in cults because like, I like history. I like looking at how we evolve as a society. Like, that's just something I find interesting. I like to watch lots of documentaries. I like to read books. I'm just curious about the world and things and perspectives that are different than mine and how they change or reaffirm or challenge my perspective. And it's like this constant development of me and experiencing of my understanding of the world. And that's a thing I'm going to do till I die, because that's just who I am, right? That's not everyone. Everyone's not like that. But when I look at these trends, like of times in human collective karma or consciousness where we reach these periods where we could expand, and there's almost like a clapback, right? And that's that where are those magnets, right? It's like two magnets being opposite, and then the closer they get, they either repel or they have to line up, right? So there's that sort of ebb and flow and dance to everything in the universe, but also like in the way we are with society. And every time we have these like waves of enlightenment, there's always this moment where that person who is there to shepherd in that wave of enlightenment, it's almost like they lose that battle to ego or temptation, and then they get destroyed. Like, I'm thinking, what was that? Bikram Yoga, the Wild Wild Country documentary. It's like anytime that there's something that's getting momentum and it could be good, it's almost like humanity's darkness, its seed of our inner darkness comes out and sort of destroys. And it's like, how do we maintain some level of like, because religion doesn't own hope. It doesn't own goodness. It doesn't own, even like she said, was it like in my, and I'm gonna watch more of her content because it's just so good and it's so thought provoking and it's so true. I've witnessed so much of these things, came to these awarenesses. I love it. But it's like, wanting world peace it's like a human thing. Wanting better, it's just like a larger version of that. But the problem is when those things aren't tangible, they are and can be co-opted. They can be used for not the purpose that they're for. And it's easy to get behind a feeling or an idea and feel good about yourself and be like, that's enough. That's just enough. You know, like, oh, well, I want there to be world peace, so I'm a good person now, right? But it's like, it's like cosplay, but that's another video. But the thing is, it's like, how do we better ourselves and not fall prey to the lesser parts of our humanity that sort of like derail us, right? Like, something can start good and then end bad, or start bad and then end good, right? You can't look at it like that. It's like, what do I want to participate? What is my consent? These things. But being able to see people for what they are, things for what they are, having discernment will always be a useful skill in any avenue of your life. But that requires so much reflection and honestly, you have to be honest with yourself and look at things that may make you uncomfortable. Like she says in one of her video series, like, we just sort of write off certain things. And in spirituality, I can see that, or people don't have the time or desire to go deeper. But there is paradox. There's things that don't make sense, that are in direct opposite that exist. And I think because that exists, but more so our conditioning in the way of society, religion. Like, I grew up in the military and I was always very aware of like, this is such a fictional reality and everyone cosigns it and they play their roles. And it's like, it just seems so easy for humanity. I mean, look at the Holocaust. Like, this is educational purposes, TikTok. The fact that so many people just cosign this, like how, like there was such a lack of human discernment that allowed and continues to allow us to be co-opted. And we're seeing it in America right now with our politics as well. You have to be self-aware and self-examine and work on self-actualizing and self-reflecting to not become prey to those things. But it is a challenging process because you may have to admit things to yourself that you don't want to admit, or look at things you don't want to look at. And we can still have values, like we want a better world, but how do we make it tangible and practical and grounded so that it's not just something that someone can use to co-opt us? Because there will always be people who want to take, and there will always be people who want to give, but we have to make sure the people who are giving to things that are going to be better, and not giving to things that are people who are taking. But again, and I'm excited for her next book, because especially in America, we are programmed to write off things and sign up for things without thinking any deeper and just keep going.